Hi, my name is Phil. I talk about politics, and in this video I'd like to discuss Boris Johnson's latest assault against the rule of law as he instigates a review of judicial processes against the government. Now, this would be calamitous enough in itself, but one implication is that he must surely intend to assault the independence of the Scottish legal system, which has existed without question since the Union formed in the early 18th century. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So I think to go through this, I need to essentially cover three bits. One is just the general concept of judicial review. Secondly, why Boris Johnson wants to change it. And third, how he can't really achieve his aims without completely trashing the Treaty of Union that formed the legal basis for the formation of the United Kingdom. So, judicial review. The bane of governments who are up to something that's not entirely on the level. A judicial review is a legal device used when members of the public believe that the government are acting unlawfully. The most famous judicial review, and there's been a number, and there's going to be a number more over the next few years, but I think the most famous one over the past few years would be the very fiery Supreme Court case where the judges found by unanimous decision, the most senior judges in the UK, that Boris Johnson had acted unlawfully in proroguing Parliament last autumn. It's also an extremely good example of how this involves Scotland's independent judicial system as well, but cover that in a bit. So essentially, Boris Johnson is launching a review of this process. This is because he and his government are breaking all sorts of laws and intend to continue doing so. But it's extremely bothersome when people keep taking the government to court and then judges pronounce against him. So what this review is going to do is essentially look at the question as to whether certain issues should be non-justiciable, which is a word I hate. Justiciable? Anyway, what that means is if it's non-justiciable, then it means judges can't pronounce on it. You can bring the case before them, we can't do anything about it. Sorry, it's not for us to decide. It's a political issue. In essence, what this would do is to render the government above certain laws. Laws would exist, but the government has no accountability to them. They don't want the laws themselves to be repealed, because that's what they would normally do. If there was a law that they didn't like, then they would... they themselves can't repeal it, but they would get Parliament to repeal it. They've got control of Parliament at the moment. That's what they would do. No. They want the law to be in place. It's quite proper that other people should obey that law. They just don't want to be bound by it themselves. So the intention is to make a range of government acts non-justiciable. Hopefully that's the last time I have to say that. Which means that if the government were to transgress certain laws, nobody could really do anything about it, because what would happen is people would bring a case against the government and the judge would have to say, sorry, I don't have the authority to decide on this matter. It's non-justiciable. I had to say it again. Needless to say, putting anything in place that makes a government less accountable is a step towards dictatorship, because a robust democratic system demands that the government, just like everyone else, has to obey the law, and that you have some process of testing whether or not the government has complied with that law. So, how is Scotland crucial to this scenario? Well, if, for example, you believe the government is breaking the law, for example, when Boris Johnson prorogued Parliament last year, you seek a judicial review. Now, in England, you would go to the High Court. In Scotland, it's the Court of Session. And these are both very high constitutional courts with the authority to decide upon such matters. Any appeals, as happened last year, would then advance to the Supreme Court, who would have the final say. So Boris Johnson can easily nobble the High Court in England, but Scotland has its own high-level constitutional court, Court of Session. And this isn't really anything to do with devolution as such. It existed before Scotland even joined the Union. The Court of Session is an ancient, judicial system in Scotland. Existed when Scotland was its own country, and was preserved when Scotland joined with England and formed the United Kingdom. And, its authority was preserved in the Treaty of Union. Article 19 of the Treaty of Union between England and Scotland specifically says that the Court of Session is preserved in all time coming, forevermore. Now, and why it's important is, again, going back to that issue of the prorogation last year. So what happened was, because of the little vagaries sometimes between English and Scots law as well. So because of an arsed up court case, I can't remember when this was. I think this might have been early 20th century, maybe 19th century. But at some point in the past, a right hash was made of a court case in England, in the High Court, and you end up with a precedent being set. So basically, when people took the government to court in the High Court, the judges had to say that we can't decide on this matter. But that same situation does not exist in the Court of Session. So the Scottish judges, which I think are called advocates in the Court of Session, they looked at it and thought, oh yeah, we can absolutely decide on this. And they decided that the government had broken the law, which meant that the government had to go, which meant they had to appeal it, and it went to the Supreme Court, at which point the Supreme Court said, oh yeah, you have broken the law. Really, really badly. Can you stop it? Can you stop it right now? So it does no good for Boris Johnson to nobble the High Court and not the Court of Session because, and you can also see why there's justifiable outrage at the notion that Boris Johnson would seek to change, the Court of Session's independence here and authority. But from my point of view, I am going to say, just to calm it down potentially, I've got to say, obviously I'm not a constitutional or legal expert, but surely it's not even possible, is it? Can't be possible. Surely Boris Johnson doesn't have the authority to alter anything to do with the Court of Session in any way. Because if he tries, I'm quite sure the Scottish government would have something to say about this. It would end up in the Supreme Court, which is the highest court in the land, and surely they would turn around and say to Boris Johnson, no, of course you can't do this. That's ridiculous. They'll say that there's no way he can make changes to the authority of the Court of Session without the authority of the Scottish Government, which would 100% not be forthcoming. Doesn't matter who has control of the Scottish Government. But anyway, as I say, why would he even need to try? Like I say, if he nobbles the High Court, that means that people won't be able to bring certain cases for judicial review against him in England. And if it was on a matter that pertained purely to English matters, some matter in England, okay, then be screwed. But if it's a matter that pertains to the UK in general, well, then that covers Scotland, Court of Session. And so if at any point it even might impact Scottish matters, then the Court of Session would be able to hear that case, and they may conduct a judicial review. So, Boris Johnson breaks the law. A legal case is made for judicial review. High Court in England says, sorry, I haven't got any authority to judge on this matter. So they take it to Edinburgh, and the Court of Session go, yeah, we can decide this. A senior Scottish judge or advocate hears the case, tells the Prime Minister he's been a naughty boy and he must stop being a naughty boy at once and go and sit on the naughty step. So without seeking to hamstring the Court of Session, Boris Johnson can't make himself above the law because he'll just get clobbered. If he can't get clobbered in one court, he'll get clobbered in another. So then I think to myself, so how worried should we be? So the simple fact that he's even trying to do this inevitably will weaken the union still further because, like I said, I don't know whether he could do it or not. I can't imagine he could, but I can't know. So most people would surely look at this and just be thinking, hang on a minute, and we need to get out of this before he causes irreparable damage to us. And you'll just increase the case for Scottish independence. So he can cause irreparable damage to the UK just by trying it, even if he can't actually do it in the end. Because this process will take some time. Then, of course, you do come to the question, can he actually do it? I mean, I just don't see how. How is it possible for him to wipe away that which has been enshrined in the very Act of Union, the very start, the very birth of our country? I don't believe he can. And I don't believe that even if Westminster could somehow do this, I don't believe it would get enough votes. Yes, I know he has a majority in Parliament. It would only take about 40 Conservative MPs to rebel against him and it would never go through. And do you know what? Surely to goodness, there cannot be fewer than 40 Tory MPs who would go, who would oppose this monstrosity. Surely they would. And I mean that. I'm not just saying, oh, any decent MP would. Oh, sorry, they haven't got decent ones. No. I mean, even Conservative ones would. But like I said, I'm not an expert. I'm not a constitutional expert. I'm not a legal expert. And I haven't heard anyone who is pronounced upon it just yet. I'd also point out as well to the fact that Boris Johnson is running out of time as Prime Minister. I mean, I don't know how much longer he can have, but I think Brexit is really all that's keeping him in place right now. I think that's it. I expect that once we've left the transition period and Brexit has sort of entered the next phase, that his protections are going to be stripped away fairly rapidly in 2021. All of his MPs know that he's not the person to solve a real problem. And at the moment, Brexit is a made-up problem, but next year it becomes a real problem. He'll be no good for that. So for various reasons, I don't think this plan can ultimately see fruition. But I do worry about the damage he's going to do to the country in even trying it. But those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. I hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, please also click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.